And we know, we've seen already that this coronavirus has exposed and exacerbated the inequities facing our most vulnerable students. Those inequities in particular impact our Black and Brown and Indigenous students living and those living in poverty.
What we know and what has been mentioned here is that these problems didn't start with COVID. This is about intergenerational compounding of disparity and the fact that this wealth gap has been compounded over generations.
And it's being brought to bear in the bright light that as 12 million students can't participate in remote learning because they don't have access to broadband internet or the technology they need, we know that we, the educators, cannot stand in those gaps by ourselves. We need partners to ensure that we are not just solving the problem right now today, but that we are making structural changes so that these gaps no longer exist.
Housing and homeownership truly is the key to closing the wealth gap. It is the most foundational reason for the wealth gap to begin with. So if segregation, housing segregation in particular, and lack of homeownership is that thread that goes through almost any of the issues that we're discussing. If you pull on that issue on segregation, education inequality gets tugged. You pull on that, health disparities get tugged. Really, to address so many of these issues, we have to get behind partnerships that focus on how to close the home ownership gap. And I think there's lots of possibility for private companies who have been a part of this history to look for solutions where they can contribute to down payment assistance or other creative strategies to help people qualify today, to help create some restorative justice for the money that we've lost in this country because of this housing history.
I also just want to highlight with respect to housing, what the disparity, what we're talking about, particularly to the extent that home ownership has historically been a pathway to the middle class for many people in many communities. Right now, approximately 70% of white families own their home. And just compare that to about 40% of Black families own their home. This is a huge disparity, and this contributes and amplifies this racial wealth gap.
I think this is a portion of this is about access to capital. I want to make sure that Black people have the capital to start businesses. And if they have a bad month or a quarter, that it's going to be okay. They're going to be able to get through it. There is no flexibility right now. And how do we build back a system where the private sector is actively engaging in helping Black people own and open up businesses?
When we talk about equity, we're talking about opportunity. So we're talking about doors. If they exist, how do we widen them? If they don't exist, how do we create them? And that means credit and capital. But we know that that's not enough, right? There have been, well-intended policies in the past, but the fact of the matter is that if they don't get enforced, then they don't become real.
And beginning with at that very basic level of educating, we want to partner with the business community to help us with things like financial literacy in our schools, so our students graduate with that level of understanding, so that as they go into their careers or into higher education, they already have that foundation. So we want to reach out, and we want businesses and other organizations in the community to reach out to us, so together we can ensure that every one of our students is prepared to actually not only close these gaps, but to excel.
There's just a real appetite for those types of partnerships from corporate America, from private sector, I think at both the national and local level, particularly with companies who have employees all across the country. I mean, we talk a lot about capital in cash, but there's also human capital and mentorships and tutoring sessions and things of that nature. We can use multiple pillars of resources to engage with communities and schools and educators.
There are some pretty significant procurement-related policies that are outlined in the Biden racial equity plan. And in that context, we are asking for the businesses that are receiving large federal contracts to actually have both transparency and accountability. We're asking for their partnership in having that type of transparency and accountability in terms of not only how they engage businesses owned by people of color as a part of the execution of their contract, but also looking at their own diversity practices and asking for transparency to those ends as well.
I think this is really about creating that atmosphere that the private sector is already starting to feel, right? Like we've already seen more Blacks and women hired in the past 8 months. I think I've seen the past 8 months. So I think we're moving really quickly. So I'm not sure on the policy front what exactly that looks like, but I do think it starts with building relationships. I do think it starts with working with business-focused organizations, Business Forward, the BRT, Chamber of Commerce, things of that nature. So we can build those relationships with the private and public sector.
The public is driving this in so many ways. You have young people, people of all ages, from all backgrounds, who have been elevating this issue of racial justice. And you see private companies responding, you see electeds responding, you see many leaders like the ones who are on this call who have been saying this for a very long time, getting that support that they need to take those actions and to be able to receive the support from their peers. So I think that as much as this is a public-private partnership issue in terms of seeing that diversity in corporations, it's an issue that really involves every single American out there.
I feel like it's important for me to note that I just keep hearing the same themes, throughout this past hour. This idea that, the problem that we're facing around racism is systemic. Therefore, we need massive systems change across our entire country.